Hi, this topic is actually called Adulting 101, and it is based on the book Adulting 101. And what I'm really doing is just pulling information out of that book and sharing with you what I think the most significant aspects of this book is. So I want to start off by posing a question, what I call an essential question. It is, what does it truly mean to be an adult versus an emerging adult? I kind of landed on this definition of emerging adulthood when I was working on my doctorate. I also found in my years of teaching experience that I found college students that maybe didn't know how to write a check, like a financial transaction, writing a check, filling out an envelope, properly addressing an envelope, or even forming particular types of letters. And I think that just made me realize that some of the things that I may have learned early in my life, whether from home or school or church, maybe weren't being addressed in current times. So I have realized, and a quote from the book, I realized that most students I worked with were not prepared for real life. They had studied in school for 12 grades and then 4 years in college, yet after those 16 plus years, they were lacking some of what we consider basic adult survival skills. So I hope you will think, as we cover the content in this book, and some of you may be reading this book for an assignment, I hope you'll think about growth. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do, is grow in your skills, not to think about this as drudgery, even though some aspects of it may be, but just to think about, how can you grow? How can you put in hard work, effort, intentionality, and leave being equipped with something else? So what Adulting 101 will encourage you to do, and I encourage you to read it, is to think about your mission in life. Maybe even some tips and tricks on how to be wildly successful at work. Step-by-step guide to dealing with your finances. Everything in this book is very practical. It may be things that you, in your mind, say, well, I think that's just common sense. But maybe for someone else, they haven't been exposed to this kind of information. They haven't been guided on how to do these things. So that is my hope, that by sharing this book or some of the highlights that I take away from it, that you will benefit from the information as well. So here we go, Adulting 101. I want you to think about what it means to live a legacy. I have read a lot of research over the last few years about different seasons of life and what people say when they're at the end stages of their life, whether it's regrets or things they wish they had done. All of that comes to a connecting point of what I think of as living a legacy. There's a lot of topics in the book that address this. I like the fact that they say the death rate is holding steady at 1 per person. You will die. It's just a matter of when and how. So thinking in those regards of leaving a legacy, you have to realize that a meaningful life is not just going to happen. You have to be intentional about those things and think about what that means for you and what being successful is and how to live a life with purpose. They basically introduce what they call the big 3, finding out what matters in this life, giving yourself to that, begin with the end result in mind. What do you want people to say about you when you're gone? And crafting a life mission statement and the unifying principles that will allow you to have that specific life. Throughout the book, they use hashtags. At least that's the popular thing now, so maybe it will resonate more with you. But the hearse and the U-Haul, we can't take things with us. We can't take material things with us. So by focusing on our purpose and mission in life, hopefully the legacy we leave will be a lot more important than anything we could accumulate. Hopefully you're going to be touching lives. So they don't address this in Adulting 101, but I have seen books where they ask you to consider your own funeral. And one of the hardest things I have ever done when working through Michael Hyatt's life plan is to write my own eulogy, to think about what do I desire people to say about me at my funeral? What kind of legacy am I leaving? And so I think that's a challenge, and I would encourage you to do it. I also encourage you to write out a personal mission statement. What do you hope for your life? Just as an organization, a business has a mission statement that they use to guide all of their decision making, I think that's appropriate on the personal level as well. And I have a couple of blog posts I want to recommend. One is Wake Left Behind. The other is I Sliced Instead of Peeled, which relates to this idea of relationships that we develop and the legacy we leave through those relationships. So what I am going to encourage you today is to ask and listen. I think you should ask God first and foremost, what is his mission for you? Look in scripture, see what it says about living a purposeful life. And then I will encourage you to have learning partners, mentors, people who care deeply about you, that you trust what they have to say, and ask them about their personal mission statement, or what did they see maybe God having in store for you. I think we have to sometimes peel back the layers and figure that out. And the sad thing is you can get advice, you can ask, you can listen, but ultimately this is the decision that you have to make personally. How am I going to live my life? Now, as you move into the professional world, you move out of this, being a student, and you move into the professional world. The authors recommend the big three that they have here. One, always look the part. So always dress above what you should for the job. Be prepared with questions, your resume, and references, and practice, practice, practice. The more you practice using resources on campus that are available to you, using faculty, staff, friends, peers, asking them to interview you, the more comfortable you get at that process, the better off you will be. So I'm going to recommend that you have an awesome interview. And in the book, they actually have 15 steps for how to have an awesome interview. And all of those are really great, reasonable, practical suggestions that you can follow. One of the things I would probably focus on the most, and I hope this will be emphasized as you see how I approach the class, how I approach our assignments, the things I ask you to do, that punctuality is very important. And one of the quotes from the book I have used in other classes, not just this one, but it says, when you're late, you're communicating to other people that your time is more important than their time. It clearly states that the only person you care about is yourself. You're being selfish, whether you realize it or not. And that's usually not the motivation, but it's the result and the perception that comes away when you are not punctual, whether that's for an appointment, submitting things on time, following through, those types of things. So also think about the skills you can develop, things you can be working on now that will help you for the professional world, and even something simple as learning email do's and don'ts. What should you say? How should you compose a professional email? It will look different than a email or communication you're sending to one of your closest friends. There needs to be professionalism in how you approach, and we talk about that a little bit in the communication module. So once you're in the professional world, you're also going to be a chance to be a leader. That may be a leader with a title. It may be being a leader through your influence. It may be a leader with your peers without a title. But leadership is influence. You must lead yourself first. Leadership is a skill that cannot be developed overnight, but you build on it over the long haul. And true leadership is in developing other people. I come from a sports background. I love sports. So one of the things that always amazes me as far as leaders in the sport industry, particularly head coaches, are those that develop the skills in other people. Their assistant coaches, their student coaches, their athletes, they come in and learn from them, and they're not threatened when they go on to success. That's their purpose. They're trying to develop future leaders. And so I think it's on page 32, beginning on page 32, you will find 20 principles for life-changing leadership. So I encourage you to go through each one of those. It has to do with developing others, asking good questions, having a sense of humor, celebrating even little milestones, thinking about those things as you go through your professional career. So I encourage you to review over those, page 32 through page 34. Another part of Adulting 101 that I like, and is kind of a philosophy with my life, has to do with being relational. What they use is hashtag chemistry competence. You may have heard this term before, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. Those are kind of some buzzwords that are going on right now, but it has to do with how you approach others. It can actually be defined as the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So basically, it's just connecting with people. And you have people in your life that are very good at this, and you have people that may be kind of poor. This isn't a skill set they have. I encourage you to look for those behaviors you want to model of those people that you consider are emotionally intelligent. And a lot of that has to do with listening. I have a blog post called EQ, RQ, and IQ, and that's the emotional quotient, relational quotient, and of course your intelligence quotient. And sometimes I think, and research will back that opinion up, that EQ sometimes is more important than IQ. And so I think sometimes how you handle yourself in the interview, how you engage in conversation, those are things that can help you in the professional world, honestly, in ways that being smart and knowledgeable cannot. So how do you show EQ at work, especially when you are in situations where you collaborate with other individuals? I think you learn to build friendships. You find out what's happening with others outside of work, family names, what are they into? What are their hobbies? How do they spend their free time? All of these things can help, especially when you're working on a team towards, say, a specific project goal. It helps. And it is complicated. Relationships are. And I'm going to share a little bit more about Michael Todd's book, Relationship Goals, in the next or in another presentation. But I just want you to think about these things. How can you be relational at work? How can you develop not only those personal but professional relationships? And then we move into being a good steward of money. All of us were raised in different environments. And how money is handled is one of the biggest sources of conflict in marriages, in any kind of relationship, roommates. It doesn't matter what it is. Money always has an impact. So I'm just going to pull up all of these different hashtags that they have. Cream. Oh man, I didn't write it down. I didn't write down what it meant. All right, but anyway, going back and looking at those things for managing money, their big three is thou shalt spend less than you earn, maybe way less. Debt is going to be your enemy. Number two, thou shalt start now, like today. Seriously, put it on your to-do list today. As soon as you have an opportunity to participate in your retirement program at your organization, do it. Don't wait. And number three, thou shalt give generously. So you reap what you sow. So make sure you are sowing good seeds. Okay, there are actually two perspectives of money that I want to share with you. One is scarcity, and that has to do with the fact that your total resources are going to be limited. There's not enough for everyone, so you got to get yours while the getting is good. Looking out for yourself. The second perspective is one of abundance, that there is enough for everyone. There's enough to go around. And here we go back to you reap what you sow. So gratitude unlocks this attitude of abundance. And there are a lot of resources out there that can help you, from how to start saving money now, how to retire as a millionaire. They actually have 15 steps on how to retire as a millionaire. And I'm not going through all of these, but think about the sources that you're using and how you're approaching money. And then I encourage everyone to do a budget. If that is something you have not done before, I teach this in my sport finance class. I will be happy to give you some documents that'll show you how to do a budget. Most of these you can find online, but it basically has to do with being accountable for where your money is going, knowing where your money is going, and then sticking to what you earn and making sure that you are not going into debt. And then in there, some budgeting basics. I just like their hashtags. I think they're funny, but they all provide good information on how to be a good steward of your money. And the last one, of course, don't forget you need insurance. And that's not something we like to spend our money on, but it's true. And then we also have to think about how we are earning credit, our credit score. What are we doing that helps us establish good credit over time? All right, and then we're moving on to being a good steward of your time. We've talked about money. Now we're going to talk about time. A lot of people don't necessarily think about stewardship of their time, but the big three in this chapter, a little over a long time can be a lot. Ask what the most important thing is to do that day, and then win the morning, win the day. I will spend a lot of time talking about big rocks. Those are the things that you need to accomplish each day. I just finished reading a book that had to do with time management, accomplishing things, and they recommended having a little note. So like for today, I have one thing I want to accomplish at work. If I do nothing else, I want to get that one thing done. So that's how I am going to steward my time for the day. And actually today it was to do this recording. So we finish this, I get that done. But a lot of us, especially your generation, has a tendency to think that they can multitask. And this is actually a myth. It is a trap. We cannot. I don't care how young and smart you are, you cannot multitask. Your brain is going to switch between those tasks. So you're taking focus away from one thing and giving it to another. You are not actually multitasking. You're actually paying little attention to the things that you're doing. The brain works best when it can focus on a single task for an extended period of time. I call this deep work. So your best friend when it comes to productivity is going to be airplane mode. So turn off your phone. You will see a difference in your productivity. You will see that actually soar. How you approach your email, how you have a practical daily rhythm into your day, all of these things are going to become important. And then I encourage you to think about your goals and what we call SMART goals. You may have heard this acronym before. specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then putting a time frame to it. So sometimes you might just want to share your goals with someone else so that you have somebody holding you accountable for what you are hoping to accomplish. And then this next slide, well, top button, I would say airplane mode. All right, you know you're an adult when. These are all kind of funny, and I'm not going to go through each one of them, but they do have a tendency to put things in perspective for us. I think a lot of people will say, I know I'm an adult when I am married and have kids. I am neither married nor have kids, so maybe I'm not an adult. Okay, I'm going to measure adulthood a little bit differently, but you might think of a fun way to select a statement to complete each of these sections that I'm going to mention. So you know you're an adult when, might have to do with marriage. Like I said, I am married and have kids. You know you're an adult when something mental, you know how to handle certain situations, you know how to lead. So I encourage you just to go through each one of these and maybe think of, even in a humorous way, you know you're an adult when you dress a certain way, or you actually leave a voicemail, how you manage your time. There's lots of tips and tricks that they have in this chapter. Could be owning a car, or, how you approach the grocery store, or what kind of financial situation you're in. We all have different visions in our mind of what being an adult is. However, you're not there yet. I still consider you an emerging adult, and that's okay. So now I want to tell you or offer their advice on how to crush college. And I realize many of you may be beyond just beginning your college experience, but there is some wise advice here, if that's not you, that you might consider passing on to someone else. So just understanding the big picture of what's going to happen during college, that this is a time for you to develop yourself personally and professionally, spiritually, that what you're learning today is preparing you for life, for hopefully a long and fruitful or flourishing life, as I like to say. But they actually give practical steps for how to handle the first week, the first month, the first semester, and the first year. So thinking about the relationships that you're forming, the habits you're forming, all of these are real world scenarios that help you think about your money, how you handle your time. I would say just be real careful, especially in the first month, that you're not comparing your experience to others. You're not comparing your month one experience to someone else month 200, whatever it is, but to think about how intentionally you want to approach your college experience. And then in closing, I just have a few questions that I encourage you to think about for reflection. And one of those is, what role does Jesus play in your adulting process? How are you looking to him for guidance? What are you learning from his words, his scripture? What was the most surprising thing you have read or learned, maybe in this adulting 101? Or what are you most excited for in the days ahead? You will have amazing opportunities ahead of you. There will also be days that are just very mundane and monotonous. And I think it's important that we understand and have a grasp that although adulthood can be very rewarding, it's tough. And you will have days you will struggle, and you will have a lot of responsibility put on you. And I think thinking ahead about those things and really having a purpose and mission for your life will help guide all of the things that have been addressed in this particular presentation. Okay, there's the resources. Have a great day.